Hello and welcome. Tonight we head out onto the Appalachian Trail with a story called Don't Eat the Berries on the Appalachian Trail. As a reminder, all these stories are written exclusively for this channel, so if you enjoy them, hit the like and subscribe as that always helps, and let's get into it. Day 1. Georgia section of the Appalachian Trail. I lifted my backpack higher onto already tight shoulders. Today, I've already gone 15 miles in my stomp over the mountains of Georgia. I had been walking this more than 2,000-mile trail for only 2 weeks, but even this early on, I didn't care about the views anymore. I just wanted to get to the next water source, sit down, and take my backpack off my shoulders. While technically a walk in the park, 15 miles through the Georgia section of the Appalachian Trail isn't like strolling through a flat field of grass or over a couple of hills. It's mountains. I was a 160-pound man hiking between 10 and 11 hours every day. So I was burning more than 4,500 calories every single one of those days. My legs ached and my hunger grew to the point where I understood viscerally why some people try to eat shoe leather when they're desperately hungry. My mouth watered as I thought about the noodles I was going to eat that night. I only had one meal and one snack left in my bag. But no worries, because I should have been at the next town early the following day. That small city was only about 5 miles from where I planned to camp tonight. But then, just as I was lost in my thoughts about food, the sky opened up like someone had unzipped the clouds and rain crashed down. The strength and quantity of the rain made it almost impossible to see. But I spotted what I thought was a trail marker and ran towards it as my feet slammed against the solid rock under my shoes. I kept running, my hands over my head, desperate to find shelter. After about 10 minutes of searching, I had left the rock area behind and was stepping on dirt and grass. The rain calmed slightly, and I could see well enough to know I was off the trail. I turned in a slow circle, my eyes scanning for signs of the path, my arms slack by my sides. I decided that instead of wandering farther and perhaps putting more distance between myself and the trail, I should camp there. After only 2 weeks on the trail, I was already an expert at tent setup, so I quickly put up my tent and climbed in. I left my muddy shoes in a plastic bag at the entrance. I resolved to eat dry noodles and a bit of granola, knowing that starting a fire in this rain would be next to impossible. I drank some water, careful to leave enough left over to last me if it took a while to find my next water source. Day 2. Lost. The next morning, the sun filtered in through the thin film in my tent. I placed an arm over my eyes to block out the light as I remembered last night. Worried about what I might find, I sat up and unzipped the tent flap. Outside were green trees everywhere. I climbed out of my tent, careful to step into my shoes before allowing my feet to touch the still muddy ground. I did a slow circle, just like I had the night before. Naturally, I could see better than last night. The earth smelled fresh, like pine, wet, and dirt. I heard birds chattering in the trees. Everything was peaceful, but I had no idea which direction I came from or where the trail was. I returned to my tent, rummaged through my bag, and pulled out my cell phone. As expected, no signal, but it was worth a try. Unsure what to do, I packed my bag, drank almost the last of my water, and looked around again. The AT, as people call the Appalachian Trail, is a friendly, popular path. Despite this, I can hike alone for hours each day without seeing anyone. I tried shouting, "Hello! Hello! Can anyone hear me? I've stepped off the trail. Anyone?" I paused, listening. Nothing. I took a deep breath and gazed at the ground, trying to spot some sign of my hurried passing. Broken sticks, crumpled leaves, anything. Everything looked the same in every direction. I lifted my backpack onto my shoulders and decided to go in one direction for 15 minutes. If I didn't see the path, I'd turn back, head straight here, and try a different direction. I gathered a bunch of sticks together so I would know when I found this spot again, then got started. I set a timer on my watch and walked, trying to pretend it was just another day on the trail. As I went, my stomach growled, reminding me of my never-ending hunger. I decided to save the last of my granola for later and ignored my needs. At the end of my 15 minutes, I stopped. The scenery hadn't changed much from the never-ending rolling mountains of trees. Undeterred, I shouted again for help. Again, nothing. I strained my eyes for any sign of trail markers. The only thing I could see was a bush bursting with fresh red berries. I stepped towards the bush, but kept track of which direction I needed to walk in to return to my pile of sticks. I took off my backpack and squatted down by the bush. I picked up one of the small berries and held it gingerly in my fingers. Are there wild raspberries growing out here? I sniffed it, and the sweet, tangy scent of raspberries filled my nose. I hadn't had fresh food for a week. Normally, it's taboo to eat anything from the surrounding area because you want to leave no trace and make sure that you aren't stealing from the animals that live there. I agree completely with this sentiment. I popped one in my mouth. Sweet juice rolled over my tongue, and I couldn't help eating a second, and a third, and finally a whole handful. As I munched, I realized they weren't raspberries, but they tasted similar and were delicious. After a minute, I forced myself to stop as juice ran down my mouth, my hands sticky. I stood up and returned to my spot with renewed energy, ready to head back to my pile of sticks. As I worked my way through the woods, my heart began to beat much too rapidly for my activity level. I clenched my fists and curled my lips. Calm down. Like it was out of my control. My breathing accelerated, and a squirrel passed by me on a tree. Without any thoughts entering my mind, my hand shot out and grabbed the furry creature. I grinned at it before I brought it to my lips and bit off its head. With blood dripping from my mouth and mixing with the berry juice, I spat out the head and dropped the body as I realized what I had done. I stood, motionless, staring down while I was still panting. As my breathing slowed, I tilted my head to the side, really looking at this. I picked out the body, sniffed, and instantly my mouth filled with saliva. I swallowed and bit my lip. Hesitatingly, I brought it towards my mouth, ripped back the fur, and ate the small bit of squirrel meat. Even as I chewed, I half wanted to vomit while the other half of me glanced around for another squirrel to kill. It was like there were two people inside of me. One with a desperate urge to eat and kill, and another that was horrified by my actions. At last, there was no squirrel meat left, just bloody fur and some bones and guts. I guzzled the last of my water, wiped my hands on my pants, and started back towards my pile of sticks. As I crunched along, I mulled over what I had done. Never, in my life had I killed another animal like that. How could I? Sure, I've hunted and shot my fair share of game, but I always killed quickly, efficiently, and as humanely as possible. Right on time, I found my stick pile, set my 15-minute timer, and headed off in another direction. About 5 minutes into my walk, I came upon another berry bush. I thought back to the sweet juice and unconsciously licked my lips. I swear I could smell them from here. I didn't have any water left. Unable to stop myself, I decided that I would just grab a handful, keep walking, so I couldn't be tempted to eat more. I picked them off the bush and placed them in my handkerchief. I returned to my path, eating the berries one by one and licking my fingers. Out of nowhere, I heard the sound of whistling. I stopped and held my breath. There it was again. "Hello!" I called, running toward the sound. "Hello! I got lost! Can you hear me?" The whistling stopped and I halted in my tracks. A pause, then, "Someone out there?" "Yes, please! Keep talking!" "Yes, I'm right here. I'm on the trail. I can hear you. You're really close." A few seconds later, I ran up on another hiker. He was a tall man with a big snarly beard. His hands held the straps of his pack. I nearly hugged him when I saw him, but stopped when I saw him staring at my pants. "Is that blood?" he asked, pointing to the dark spots on my khakis. As I stared down at my pants, I reflected on how I had regretted picking khakis ever since the first day of this trip, considering they show every stain. I glanced toward where he was pointing and replied, "Huh? Oh, yeah, squirrel blood." He shifted slightly and grunted, "Dude, how did you get squirrel blood on your pants?" It was then that my heart rate increased. I clenched and unclenched my fists, just like what happened before I hurt that innocent squirrel, but this time I knew what was happening and was able to think, "Please, no." It was like I was talking to this new thing that lived in me. In my head, I thought, calm down, please calm down." My hand shot out, and I grabbed the man's neck. I dug my fingers into his soft flesh and gritted my teeth. His eyes bulged, and his hands grabbed at mine, but I was too strong, stronger than I've ever been. The thing inside of me enjoyed this new power, and I closed my hand. I crushed his throat, even as the normal part of me teared up. "Stop!" I pleaded with myself. But I couldn't stop. I pulled the man closer to me and bit off his cheek. I turned my hand and snapped his neck, let his body fall to the ground. I crawled on top of him and ripped open his shirt and began to eat his flesh. Satiated, I grabbed his water bottle and chugged it. At last, my other self regained control again. I jumped to my feet and scrambled away from the body of the man who minutes before had helped save my life. I tripped over something and fell to my knees. I pushed up from the dirt, the tough gravel cutting my palms. I sprinted back in the direction in which I had come when I passed the berry bush again. I slowed down and faced the ripe fruit. It was that bush, I thought. There's some kind of rage-inducing poison in there. I have to get rid of the bush. I knelt down and took off my backpack. I opened it and found my fire starter. I gathered dry kindling, small sticks and big sticks, then set to work. After about 15 minutes of complete concentration, I had a decent flame. I added more and more and more wood. Then I remembered the other bush. I have to burn them all. Without thinking, I rushed off to find my pile of sticks and traced my steps back to the other bush. When I found it, I made another fire before I returned to the first, but by that time, almost an hour had passed since I made that first fire, and the flames had spread. I ran back towards the trail in time to see firefighters rushing towards the flames. Along with them were officers who called me over. "Hey, do you know what happened over here?" an officer asked. Knowing I sounded crazy, I answered, "We need to get rid of that berry bush." "So, you made this fire?" he asked, gesturing. "Yes, but you see, the berries, they make people aggressive. I know that doesn't sound normal, but please believe me, they're dangerous." The officer took a step closer to me. "What do you mean they make people aggressive?" I glanced from officer to officer. I attacked someone after eating the berries." He took another step towards me and readjusted his belt. "Go on." I couldn't help it. I think I tried to strangle him. Just over there. I pointed towards the trail. "Son, we found a body over there, and it looks like it was mauled and partially eaten by a bear. Are you saying you did that?" "I didn't mean to hurt him." "I'm gonna need you to come with me," the officer said, placing cuffs on my wrists and pushing me in front of him. "You need to get rid of the berries," I shouted over my shoulder. Yeah," he said, pushing me along. That was 7 years ago, after I received a life sentence for manslaughter. Every day since then, I've tried to warn people about the berries on the Appalachian Trail, but no one believes me. Please tell others, don't eat the berries. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. It really means the world to me. If you would like more wilderness stories, why not check out the video on the screen now?